What is up? My name is Zach. I run the channel ZakPak, and if you are watching this from Next Level Games, I would like to welcome you to this video. This is a video I've been working on for a month now. I'm actually completely re-recording the audio and starting this over from scratch, just simply because I had a lot of trouble with editing the other one. But nonetheless, this is a video for you, and for people who are watching this from my channel, from the community, who've gotten their word out there. I would truly appreciate for you to share this on social media. I have a tweet that I'll link down in the description down below, and if you have a Twitter account, I highly recommend you retweeting this so that we can make sure that Next Level Games does see this video, because obviously you guys want your feedback out there, right? This is your guys' feedback. This is what you guys want to see in a Luigi's Mansion 4 and things you want to address from Luigi's Mansion 3. So if you really want this to do well and you really want Next Level Games to hear your voice, make sure to share this video on Reddit, on Twitter, wherever you can. So without any further ado, Next Level Games, there are loads of these comments. I have at least 25 different comments from people who like many different games from the Luigi's Mansion series, and these are the things that people want addressed. I originally read the whole entire comments. I literally read everything from the comments so that you could hear it being said as well as reading it. But that just ended up making the video way too long, and I felt like it'd be kind of boring for you to watch. So I'm going to be summarizing most people's main points in each of their comments so that in case you can't read the whole thing, then you'll get a summarized version with what I'm saying and all that good stuff. So without any further ado, let's just get right on into it. So here's how most of the comments are going to be structured. This is my comment. It says what Luigi's Mansion games these people have played, their favorite game out of the Luigi's Mansion lineup, and the critiques they have of Luigi's Mansion 3. I tried to limit it to 5, but some people had a few more, which is completely okay. So for me, I've played all the Luigi's Mansion games, and my favorite is the original, and my critiques boil down to, I wish that the game was darker, I wish there were more ghost types, I wish the human ghosts had more personality, like dialogue and backstories, I wish the combat in Luigi's Mansion 3 was more like the previous games, that had the more tug-of-war aspect rather than the slam, which became repetitive, and I wish the hotel itself was less linear, being less about going from the start to the floor to the boss of the floor, and being about actually exploring the floor rather than going in a straight path with a couple of hidden rooms on the side. Next up is Ethan Mastercrafter, who has played Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon and 3, and their favorite game being Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon because they thought it was highly replayable, had solid gameplay, and a good story. And their critiques boil down to the fact that there are too many open areas, so rather than the environment feeling claustrophobic, everything's just too big. The next critique is the environment not being as consistently atmospheric, with the flashlight feeling absolutely useless in some areas. Also, the lack of replayability, as there's not really much post-game content for, the main game, and the Skyscraper lacked a lot of the customization modes that the Dark Moon game had. Also, that the game kind of felt like it was low stakes and kind of easy. There was really no difficulty to it. And like how there was the Paranormal Chaos segment in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon that really felt like everything was in danger, there was high stakes. Luigi's Mansion 3 didn't really have that. So yeah, that's what Ethan has to say. Next up is E, who has watched someone play the first game and has played the second and third games, and their favorite game is either the first game or the third game. The main gist of what this person wants differently is they want a different objective for Luigi rather than saving Mario. They bring up saving Daisy, or even having Daisy be a companion to Luigi, all that kind of stuff. They also want more unique characters, like perhaps relatives of Egad, etc., etc., and they also want the game to be more spooky and atmospheric, just like the first game. And they also mention having a haunted cruise ship, with it being Daisy's cruise ship. And I apologize if you hear a lawnmower out back now that's going off, but hopefully you don't mind it. Next up is My64. They have played all the Luigi's Mansion games, and their favorite is the original. Their critiques are that Luigi's Mansion 3's combat was a bit too repetitive, it was no more than just mashing A. Luigi's Mansion 3's ghost variety was kind of lacking, and really identical to Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon's. They don't want any more polter animals like Polter Pup or Polter Kitty. They want the boss ghost health to be more consistent and, just feel like it's consistently increasing, and that they wish that the game wasn't so linear and the game should be either more combat focused or explorative. Pikachu Lover has played every single Luigi's Mansion game, and their favorite game is Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube, with Luigi's Mansion 3 being their second favorite. These seem like more like wishes for Luigi's Mansion 4 rather than critiques, but they are definitely based on Luigi's Mansion 3, saying that they don't want Luigi to be overpowered by giving him so many abilities like they did in Luigi's Mansion 3. Luigi's Mansion 4 should have Luigi's Mansion 3 graphics. They want the elementals back, but it's not a necessity, or just at least giving him a an ability that isn't overpowered, like I'm assuming the slam. They want portrait ghosts or character ghosts to return again and making them feel more dangerous and not making them seem minion-like and giving them dialogue like with Morty. And they want the game to be darker and actually needing the flashlight to see through the rooms. Next is Luigi's Mansion fan, who has played all 3 main games, except obviously playing the original on the 3DS, and their favorite game is Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. They think it had the best atmosphere, level structure, and the great ghosts. To sum up their critiques, they think the ghosts are basically just ripped from Dark Moon with no real additions or changes to them. The boos didn't have much more relevance in this game, and the portrait ghosts didn't have too much personality. Like in Luigi's Mansion 1, they had aspirations and goals and desires and a story behind them, but in Luigi's Mansion 3, they just kind of felt like generic bosses. The structure of the game is way too linear for them. Every floor felt like a straight line to the end without anything interesting happening. They wanted the music to kind of reflect the first 2 games a little bit more, and then the combat they thought was mediocre. They kind of missed the tug of war from the previous games and thought the slamming was too easy. Also, they didn't care for the fact that the upgrade system from Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, where once you collect a certain amount of treasure, your poltergeist would upgrade. They kind of missed that upgrading system. Tango's played Luigi's Mansion 1 and Luigi's Mansion 3, and their favorite game is Luigi's Mansion, but still loves aspects of Luigi's Mansion 3. To sum up the critiques, they said that Luigi's Mansion 3 has too much filler and annoyance, mainly being Polterkitty and the rat in the kitchen, where the rat steals the elevator button twice, but that's to a lesser extent, and that some floors just kind of felt short and there's nothing much to do there. And Luigi's Mansion 3 was too lit up and funny instead of dark and spooky, which is the foundation of Luigi's Mansion. They also noted that the whole game doesn't have to be scary, but they would like some sense of spookiness to the game. Next up, they really wanted more upgrades and things to really reward you for your exploration. Collecting all the money didn't really do much for you in this game, so they really wanted that collecting to have more purpose. Next up is the ghost variety, as it really feels you're mostly just fighting goobs in this game, and there really isn't much variety. And lastly, that Luigi's Mansion 3 was too linear and had too many open spaces. Next up is Ice Soup has played all 3 Luigi's Mansion games, and their favorite game is Dark Moon. The main critiques they go over are the controls being kind of clunky and dumbed down, mainly talking about the slam mode. The game is really lighthearted and has no real dark atmosphere, the flashlight's barely needed. They also talk about the linearity of Luigi's Mansion 3 and how Luigi's Mansion just felt less linear, having keys to get secret doors that you'll not see until later in the game. Scarescaper feeling very lackluster with only 3 to 5 ghosts with constant timer on. They didn't care for Scream Park, very lackluster mini games, not really much attention put there. And then the treasure needs to mean something. Luigi's Mansion 3 didn't really have the treasure mean anything. Maxwell has played all 3 Luigi's Mansion games, so their favorite game is 2. Now, they have a whole list of critiques, basically saying wishing it was darker, wishing the ghost had dialogue backstory, wishing the music was better, wishing that the game had a similar style to the first game, wishing EGAD had more natural interaction with Luigi, wishing the combat was similar to Luigi's Mansion 2 and 1, where you felt like you were in a tug of war. Wishing the mansion felt real, wishing it didn't have all the silly gimmicks in it, basically. Wishing the controls were better, wishing there was more of a story. Wishing the ghosts in the mansion were more spooky, wishing it wasn't so linear. Wishing Princess Peach wasn't in the game, wishing there was a hard mode or some sort of hidden mansion mode, or that the AI was just better, having, the ghosts actually attack you. Orange Turtle has played all of the Luigi's Mansion games, literally all of them, and their favorite game is Luigi's Mansion 3. Their first critique is about ghost variety, and they specifically pointed out having 1,500 plus goobs and maybe 50 to 75 slinkers, that the distribution is just off. Next up is basically being able to traverse through the mansion without the need of the elevator, because the elevator just feels like a loading screen. Being able to just naturally walk from floor to floor, like you can between floors 2 and basement 1, basically is what they're saying. Next up is replayability, and they specifically go into like a boss rush mode, and there's also the Polterkitty issue, that Polterkitty feels very tacked on, and same with the boos, they don't really feel like they have a purpose, they're just kind of tacked on. Next up is DG777 Player. They have played Luigi's Mansions 1 and 3, and they are tied as their favorite game, but their critiques on Luigi's Mansion 3 was they didn't care for the floor system. Basically, they go into how some floors felt too small, some felt too linear, etc., etc. Next up is backtracking interconnectivity. This game doesn't really have any of that. It's very much linear, point A to point B. There's no real backtracking and ways to get to each floor from each other besides the elevator. Next up is the lighting and spookiness. They think the game is too bright, and they think there's a lack of ghost types, pretty self-explanatory. This needs to be more ghost types. They want the next game to be less linear, as it feels like everything is just from point A to B, and they wish it was just kind of more open in general. Depressed Luigi 92 has played all the Luigi's Mansion games, and their favorite is a tie between Luigi's Mansion 1 and 3. Their critiques consist of the length of the game, wishing the game was a bit longer, just because it felt like some floors were just kind of underbaked, like, floors 4, 9, 12, and 14, which is really, really short. Next, they want the ghost AI to be improved. They want the ghost to actually attack you rather than just usually sitting by idly waiting for you to do something. Next up, they say they would like the slam to be optional in future games, or at least kind of tweak it a little bit so that it's not as overpowered. They want the scare scraper to be fixed to make it so that you can have no time limit or no big button to stand on. And lastly, they want the game to have a little more difficulty. Next up is Harry, who's played Luigi's Mansion's Dark Moon and 3, and their favorite game is Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. Their first critique is that there was a real lack of portrait ghosts, that the ghost kind of felt the same in this game rather than Dark Moon, where the ghost had a little more of an interesting personality. Next up, they wanted more portrait ghosts, or at least have more interesting portrait ghosts, as they wish there were more ghosts like Morty that had dialogue and, had a little bit more of a personality. Next up, they said Scare Scraper wasn't as good as it was in Luigi's Mansion 2. And lastly, they did not like Polterkitty. Next up is Stratalist. They've played all 3 games, and their favorite game is the original. They wish there were more comic ghost variety. They wish the hotel felt less segmented and felt more interconnected. They wish the character portrait ghosts weren't introduced with cutscenes. They wish the Scare Scraper mode had a structured ranking system rather than a committed floor session to unlock rare and special ghosts. And he wishes you best of luck with Luigi's Mansion 4. So Jurius, hopefully I pronounced that name right, says buckle in, this is going to be a bit of a read, so have fun reading this. They are a huge Luigi's Mansion fan and have played all of the games, and they said that they can't pick a favorite because they love all of these games. So here are their critiques on Luigi's Mansion 3. Basically, they missed the upgrade system that was in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. They thought the super suction ability in Luigi's Mansion 3 was a bit of a disappointment, and basically not even that the move was bad, but that it only was used like once and it was introduced very late game. Third point is that they missed the elemental features, and that was one of the best attributes of Luigi's Mansion 1, so they should be brought back. Next, gems gave you statues in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, and in Luigi's Mansion 3 they gave you a diamond skin plunger, and this reward isn't as great as it was in Dark Moon. And that this game needs to have a little bit more of an atmosphere. It needs to be darker and spookier rather than the goofy, upbeat nature of Luigi's Mansion 3. The FNAF plushie production said that the games they've played are basically all of them. Their critiques being that they wish the game took place in a mansion, not a hotel, just because of the name of the game being Luigi's Mansion. They wish the art style felt more real, kind of like the first game. They weren't a big fan of the progression of Luigi's Mansion 3, and they weren't a fan of how you could capture ghosts in Luigi's Mansion 3 using the slam mechanic. Swiftjar has played every single Luigi's Mansion game, and their favorite is Luigi's Mansion 1 because it's highly replayable, it's spooky, and it has solid gameplay, and to this day contains a lot of mystery. Their critiques on Luigi's Mansion 3 are that they didn't really care for all the different themes within the game, and it felt kind of disjointed and not being spooky. Levels just kind of felt out of place. They thought that Luigi's Mansion 3 was also just too bright, and that there's only one portrait ghost on each floor. And they want the combat to be just purely the tug-of-war action that the original game had, and not the simple slam mechanic. Next up is Double Cherry, who's played all 3 games, and their favorite game is the original. Their critiques are they wish there were more common ghost types. They didn't really like the floor system, how it felt kind of segmented as opposed to Luigi's Mansion 1's interconnected mansion. Remember one of the puzzles Luigi's Mansion 3 being harder than it needed to be. Bringing back the gallery and having proper portrait ghosts. And having some sort of New Game Plus hidden mansion mode with some changes in it to make it feel different from the regular game. Next up from Nintendo, Disney, MLP fan, Apple Bloom. That's a long name, but I got it out at the end. Said they've only played the 3rd game, and the 3rd game is their favorite one, but their critiques are they wish there were more character arcs, particularly for Luigi. He could find the courage to be a hero, like in the 1st game, and defeat his arch enemy King Boo. Next up is common ghost types. We wish there was more variety of them. They wish more characters could appear, for example, Daisy. They wish Luigi could travel through portraits to fight the portrait ghost, and it'd be cool if you could customize the poltergeist, like with colors and logos like in Mario Strikers Battle League. Next up is Ranveria, who has played all 3 Luigi's Mansion games, including the remake, and their favorite game is the original Luigi's Mansion. Their critiques are that it needs to be more scary or more atmospheric. They're also not a fan of the cartoony graphics. They would like a spookier vibe and haunted atmosphere. And their third critique is that they wish there was a more incentive to collect money rather than just the cosmetic rewards that you get at the end of the game. Miles Lenoir says that the games they played were Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, the 3DS remake, and 3, and that their favorite game of the bunch was 3, and their critiques were that the next game should have a boss rush mode, just like there was in the 3DS remake, that you should be able to customize your Scare Scraper more, like in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, and that the boss go should have dialogue and interactions like the original game. Dominic Durr says they played all of the Luigi's Mansion games, and that their favorite game is the original. Basically, they want no more poltergeist missions, like particularly the animal missions. They want hunting the boos to have more of a purpose. They want Luigi to hum and whistle the theme again, just like in the older games, rather than just in the elevator. And it needs a darker atmosphere. Big Mac Fortnite Ronald says that they played all of the Luigi's Mansion game, and their favorite game is Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. And their main critiques are the level structure of the game, the heavily underutilized floors, and that the story, there isn't really much substance to it and that not a lot happens. Next up is Lucas Noble, whose favorite game is the original. So this one's more like Desires, I think, but it does address some things from Luigi's Mansion 3. They want more areas and more portrait ghosts, and they want the bosses to be more like monsters. They want more Polterpups, which I think is an interesting one, a new main villain to team up with King Boo. They want new gadgets and abilities and more floors, and they want the game to have the more realistic style of the first game. Next up is Luigi Man 644, who has played all the Luigi's Mansion games, and their favorite is the original, and their critiques are they wanted the dodge move from Luigi's Mansion 2 to return, they wanted more common ghost variety, they wanted portrait ghosts to have more personality, they wanted the combat to be kind of customizable, where you choose what kind of combat you'd like if you wanted the slam or the capturing mechanics of the previous games, and they also didn't care for EGAT's shop. And lastly, we have Britea, who've played the original Luigi's Mansion and Luigi's Mansion 3. Their favorite game is the original Luigi's Mansion. Their critiques are there's too little variety with the common ghosts, have more than 4 types, the portrait ghosts lacking dialogue, the goofy bright atmosphere, the lack of difficulty, and be more single player friendly. So I'm quickly actually going to compile a quick list of common themes I've seen from these comments, because that's it, that's all the comments I got. So the commonalities I've seen from a lot of the comments, I really think you should take away from this. The main things you should take away from this video, from what I've seen a lot of these comments. Firstly, the common ghosts, there need to be more of them. There needs to be more of a variety. I think that's a given. The portrait ghosts need dialogue and backstory and just have to have more personality to make them interesting to fight. People want a dark atmosphere. It doesn't have to be as spooky as the original, but having just more dark rooms, not fighting ghosts in these super bright areas. People want the spooky nature. It makes Luigi's Mansion feel unique. A lot of people also didn't care for the combat. They wanted the kind of tug-of-war nature, that fight with the ghosts, you know, where the ghosts aren't just sitting there and watching you, where you're slamming the ghost and the ghosts, they're just sitting idly by while you're destroying their friend. They want these ghosts to present a challenge and for you to actually have a good combat with them. People also want more things to do with the treasure they earn. Rather than using it on things like a bone that you should just be able to find somewhere in the hotel and a boo radar, you know, you should be able to use it to upgrade your poltergeist, to make it stronger, to do different things. Giving more purpose to the boos and getting rid of the polter animals is another main thing people wanted because of the fact that it had unnecessary backtracking. And if you want to do backtracking, then what you should do is interconnectivity between the floors. The elevator just makes the whole hotel feel segmented. Going back to previous areas and getting to explore new areas with new keys you find on different floors will make backtracking feel worth it because you're also exploring new areas. You're not just rehashing areas that you've already explored. Those are just the common themes I had seen from the comments, but of course there's many more things that could be improved as well. Luigi's Mansion 3 is a great package. The common theme with a lot of these comments as well is that these people liked Luigi's Mansion 3. We found a reason to really enjoy this game, but it's not quite the Luigi's Mansion experience that people have wanted. And as you saw, we have people whose favorite games were from all across the series, being the first game, second game, and the third game. So I really hope that you can take these comments in. I know some of them were a little bit harsh on their wording, but these are just people who are really passionate about the Luigi's Mansion games. And if you go onto that video, there are even more comments with Luigi's Mansion 4 ideas that I didn't include in this video because I wanted to be organized like this, where you saw what people's favorite games were, where you saw which ones they've played. So I really hope that next level games you do watch this, and I really hope you do take some of this feedback seriously and implement it into Luigi's Mansion 4. So with that, I will bid you adieu, and I thank you for watching this video. I really hope that you got some really good use out of it, and I hope that Luigi's Mansion 4 ends up being a really good game whenever it comes out, hopefully not too long from now. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.